U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has arrived in Indonesia, kicking off his first official visit to a region increasingly seen as a strategic battleground between the United States and China. His trip includes stops in Malaysia and Thailand as well. Now, while in Jakarta, Mr. Blinken is expected to outline Joe Biden's Indo-Pacific strategy.
Superpower rivalry for influence in Southeast Asia as America's top diplomat touches down in Indonesia for his maiden trip to the region since Joe Biden took office at the start of the year. Antony Blinken's visit comes as Washington seeks to ramp up engagement in the region, seeing ASEAN as key to counter China's growing influence. The Biden administration wants to boost ties with the bloc after Donald Trump withdrew from a regional trade deal during his time in office.
It's going to be very broad, and it's going to engage and assist in recovery from COVID, but pick up supply chains that broke down, transition to climate mitigation and green economies, digital, etc. So it's a very powerful thing.
The United States and Western allies are pushing back against what they call Beijing's growing assertiveness in the region. It has accused China of bullying by disrupting energy and fishing activities in the disputed South China Sea. Beijing has rejected those accusations, calling the U.S. an outsider who is meddling in the region.
Simon Marks joins us live now for more on this. Simon, Mr. Blinken is expected to unveil Joe Biden's much-awaited Indo-Pacific strategy tomorrow.
Yes, this is going to be a very big speech, and it's a long trip. If you include the G7 meetings that took place this weekend in Liverpool, it is part of the longest trip the Secretary of State has made since he took office. And the centrepiece of Antony Blinken's address is, of course, expected to be strategic. We are told he will seek to provide fresh assurances that the Biden administration at least is recommitting to ASEAN, in stark contrast, of course, to the Trump administration that preceded it, seeking to rally support to defend freedom of navigation in the South China Sea and push back against China's territorial claims there. But there's also expected to be talk in this speech about US economic ties with ASEAN, particularly in the areas of health, infrastructure, climate change and other investments that the US is making. Remember, it was only in October of this year that the president himself kick-started all of that with a $100 million pledge to fund some of those new initiatives. It's going to be very interesting to see how much further Antony Blinken goes in this big speech with those investments.
Yeah, well, Simon, the US president has made it very clear he wants to demonstrate that he's committed to elevating US-ASEAN engagement to an unprecedented level to some degree. What will Joe Biden see, though, as a successful outcome from this trip?
Look, I think obviously they're going to be looking to see how it's perceived, and not just in Jakarta, but across ASEAN member states. Remember, this comes just a few days after some ASEAN members were denied an invitation to participate in President Biden's Summit for Democracy that the president held here in Washington last week. But also, it's been widely noted here that the Russians are trying to steal a bit of a march on Mr. Blinken's visit. When the Secretary of State's plane landed in Jakarta, it arrived shortly after a Russian jet carrying Vladimir Putin's national security advisor to the Indonesian capital. Indeed, Antony Blinken's plane ended up parking right next to the Russian plane. The Americans were unaware that the Russian official was going to be there. Moscow tweaking Washington and claiming the two diplomats just happened to arrive at the same time in Jakarta. There is certainly a message in all of that for the Americans that Russia not only intends to compete with the US in the region, but to remind everyone that America's commitment to ASEAN more broadly has been a bit on again, off again over the last couple of American presidencies.
Thank you, Simon. Simon Marks there in Washington, D.C.